Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. Hope you're all doing well out there. Okay, so sound problem? Uh-oh, hold on. There's a sound problem, everybody? Oh shit. Hold on. Oh shit. Sounds okay. All right, okay. Okay. All right, so glad we got that figured out just in case. I always appreciate a heads up just in case something's going on with the sound, because I can't stand horrible audio quality, which leads me to my next point. There's something with ions and their just treacherous audio quality recordings that they've had for years. It's gotten way better, but a lot of their older stuff, or even not even that long ago, a few years back, some of the recordings are just total trash. But nonetheless, you know, they're one of the big wigs out there, and got to be thankful for them to be able to furnish some of these experiences. So this one comes out of the Chicago chapter and meetings, and his name is Stephen, I think it's Damroth. I'll just say Damroth. And talk about tough. He had a brother, or has a brother, who is diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic. And when Stephen was 23 years of age, this is when it occurred. And essentially his brother, I guess, woke him up and wanted a cigarette. And not soon after, Stephen said, no, I'm sleeping, I'll give you one later. Like anyone would, right? Or just, me, I'd be like, oh, just look for him yourself. But anyways, he said, no, I'll give him to you later. And well, then ends up getting stabbed. And enters the void. And what's really interesting is his own words is that he says he felt like it was a test in duality, which really, really stood out to me. And in my opinion, no offense, Stephen, if you do watch this, I think, because we're all guilty of this because we're here, I think he failed that kind of inner test, because he ended up dealing with the light. And the light also just happened to, his word, evaporate the bad feelings towards his brother who had attacked him. What's also interesting is the experience came back to him when he came back. There was like I think a brief delay in getting the experience, and it all kind of came rushing back to him in 2 minutes. It's a really interesting case. And I think the most important thing to really say too in this is on the topic of the void, and we'll even kind of rehash this once we get to it, that I am fully convinced with zero doubt that, the void that we hear about in these NDEs is a matrix void. Okay, this is not like a void state that we've talked about of our own making, and that's the difference. Is it seems, well, no, it is the case that the matrix has created this void-like state by design. Just like the whole love bomb and all that stuff is by design, this void state is also by design, because it's got to be something familiar to us. Now, some people have horrible experiences in the void, while others find it, insanely peaceful. So it really depends on the case. But what I think it really points to is the layers that this place goes to deceive us. Because I do feel in my heart that our true existence, like when you strip it all down, like our real core self, is it started and is organic with a void-like state where we're just pure existence. So that's why when we talk about it on the channel here, how, we need to set our intention to leave the entire matrix, you completely, and go to a realm of our own, a void-like realm of our own design that is impenetrable. Just to give us some time to do what we need to do to refamiliarize ourselves with us, reclaim our true essence, all of our memories, and also realize the strengths and weaknesses within us, which I really think is important, because we don't know how long we've been stuck in this mess, how long we've been veiled. And I think kind of getting the lay of the land again, so to say, on our true self is really important. There's nothing wrong with that. And, I've said in the past that, there's got to be so many different realms out there, and they're not all parasitic. It's just not the case. I refuse to believe that. So who's to say that, yeah, we, once we get to know ourselves again and realize how we screwed up, how we ended up in this scenario, and how to avoid it again in the future without compromising even 0.0001% of ourselves in exchange for an experience, then I think it's going to be awesome. I really do. But in the meantime, again, I always like to say, play it safe. So anyways, I don't want to ramble on too much. So kind of like the first segment is him leading up to his experience. It's about, I think it's a little ways before he kind of gets into the whole actual experience. I think it's about 10-15 minutes in. So I'm going to let that run quite a bit. I'll say a few things here and there, and then the tail end of it's like a question and answer session, which is also very revealing. So let's get into it. And I'm also going to be taking a poll. If you don't mind answering, I would greatly appreciate it, because I'm getting a lot more messages about people not getting notifications. So I don't know.
Around that concept, and I think that's where the NDEers are today. We are it's assumed that it's explainable. It's oxygen deprivation, or I'm sorry, I'm not a speaker, but I feel a kinship with platypus death, because they're taking shears to us. They're picking apart the story, and they're trying to break it down to the atom, the basic part. They're splitting it apart, and the scientists are very methodical in their procedures, and they're destroying the whole, which is the whole story of the experience. It's about unity. The It's about how we're all one. And breaking it down to its tiniest parts won't explain the immense vastness of the infinite story that they have to share. In any case, sorry, I'm at the square one. So that's where I come from. I had a very structured upbringing, and my family was very set in their perception of how things work. I'm the fourth child. My elder brother is paranoid schizophrenic. We discovered that about 20 years ago. He was put on medication when it was discovered, and the medication worked, but it's kind of a balancing act. So we all just kind of learned to give him space, basically. The story proper actually begins in 1995. I was sleeping late on my day off in October, and it was Friday the 13th, coincidentally. And my brother came and knocked on my door and asked me for a cigarette. And I told him that I was sleeping late, it's my day off. Come back later and I'll give him one. And he apparently took that for an answer and left. But about 10 minutes later, I woke up and he was standing over me with a knife. And as I opened my eyes, I sensed somebody was there, and I opened my eyes, and he was standing over me with a knife that I bought from the Renaissance Fair, a double-edged 18-inch dagger that was actually coming down at the time.
Damn.
And it was just complete shock. I grabbed at it out of just reflex. I saw it coming down as I was opening my eyes, and I grabbed it and managed to slow it down, and it pierced my chest. And I struggled with it, and it actually angled upward because the stern didn't stop. It angled up into my shoulder and pierced through the nerve plexus of my shoulder. I managed to pull it back out, but due to a superior position over me, I just woke up. I just basically slowed him down. He actually stabbed me a total of 4 times, twice in the chest, once in the arm, and once in the leg. I was just in a complete shock. I was in panic. It actually took me a matter of seconds before, the pain probably is what drove it home, so to speak. But I thought I was dreaming at first when I came to, and I was just completely beside myself. I didn't know what was happening. And I just kept saying, "Oh my God, you're stabbing me. I can't believe you're stabbing me." And it was just instant shock. My mother came because she heard the commotion.
So yeah, I mean, as you can tell already, it's a horrible scene. It definitely screams of life script, as Michael pointed out, Friday the 13th. But I mean, and again, we all have these life scripts, so it's no different. But it's also interesting to have the connection of the brother who's schizophrenic, who's obviously dealing with entities himself, which is a whole nother topic completely. Feel free to check out my interviews with Jerry Marzinski over on Odyssey. There's a few up there, and go into a lot of detail about that. In my opinion, if you haven't heard his information yet, definitely check out those interviews. You'll learn a lot. He's a wealth of knowledge. And then there's also a website called Hearing Voices, either .org or .com. A lot of stuff on there too. It's a whole segment of people who are fighting the mainstream narrative of schizophrenia, and being honest about what's going on, or at least in their opinion. Because remember, I'm not a medical professional, I'm not a doctor. Just as a warning, I have to say that. Sorry, but
And she came in the room and reprimanded us for fighting, both of us. And yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I was 23 at the time. Like I say, it was my day off. I was living at home. California is really hard to live on your own out there. But I was living at home, and she came in and she reprimanded us for fighting. And I think, she swears that she thought he was strangling me at the time. So I think shock had set in with her. As soon as she saw the blood, she knew something was wrong, but it didn't process for her. And she went running down the hall and to get help. Presumably, she yelled out for my sister to get on 911. And so theoretically, the ambulance was on its way. When she came in the room, he stopped. It was like somebody hit an off switch. His arms fell to his sides. He was still gripping the knife, but he had just a blank stare in his eyes. And it's like he wasn't even in there. And the autopilot turned off. And he just stood there and his arms fell to his sides. And I just took my opportunity to get out of the room. And I ran down the hall and out into the kitchen. As I'm heading down the hall, my mother is running back toward me down the hall. And I thought, okay, she's going to help me. And she actually passed me, almost like she didn't see me, and just passed me in the hallway and ran past me. I'm like, okay, I'm not sure where she's going, but she's going into danger, but I can't help her now anyway. So I continued down the hall and came out into the kitchen where my younger sister was on the phone with 911. And she told me, get on the floor, raise your legs. And we had ceramic tile floor in the kitchen. And I was just wearing a pair of shorts. I had just woken up and I'm laying on cold ceramic tile floor. And I was bleeding from the chest. I mean, it was a hose of blood. And I was holding it in myself. And I was physically struggling to survive. And
yes.
And the whole time feeling like it was a dream. So she told me to lay down on the floor, and I remember the feeling of the warmth on my back as the blood actually cooled down. And the whole scene it took a very surreal aspect as I'm laying on my back, staring at the kitchen ceiling. I just see my mother come running back down into the kitchen, and I thought she was coming to help now. And it took me a moment to realize she'd actually come out with the knife. She got the knife from him. But she didn't come to help. She went over and started washing the knife. The shock set in. And she was dealing with the shock in her own way. She was trying to get rid of what had caused the problem and not the problem that had manifested from it. So I called to her, and she grabbed a kitchen towel from the counter and came over to help. And putting the kitchen towel on my chest, she helped me keep the blood in. And it took a few minutes for the paramedics to arrive. It seemed like an eternity, shivering on the kitchen floor. And when they showed up, I thought, okay, great, I can finally give it. I can finally just let it go. It's in somebody else's hands now. And they started asking me about food allergies. Do you have any allergies? I said, well, no, antibiotics are fine, whatever, just, can we get to the hospital? Do you have any allergies at all? Well, I'm allergic to green peppers and oranges, but aside from that, can we go? And they had a checklist, and they were just going through a routine. They had their own procedure, and I was not going to get in the way of that. It was very surreal. They eventually finished their checklist and loaded me into a gurney and brought me out to the ambulance. But the whole time, as they were bringing me out, I realized the reason why they weren't in shock was because they didn't see how much blood I'd lost in my bedroom down the hall. And it wasn't until I got to the kitchen that it started pooling. They don't realize how bad off I am. They don't realize I'm as good as dead already. And it was at that point, as they were loading me into the ambulance, that I realized I'm not going to make it. As it came over me, it was actually liberating. Peace set over me, and it was still out of my hands as I'd already given it over to them. But at first the fear just turned to peace, and it felt, okay, this is it. I can't argue with however it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
I can't argue with however it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So a little giving away right there.
And it's just my time, and I gave
It's just my time.
up to that, and time, and I gave up to that,
And I gave up to that.
and the adrenaline was still working. So as they were rushing me off to the hospital, I was arguing with the paramedics as they're yelling out blood pressure to the driver and they're trying to gauge how I'm doing. And I kept interrupting and saying, just slow down, turn off the lights. You're going to get into an accident. I don't want my last minutes in this world to cause pain to anybody. And I had totally signed off at that point. I was phoning in the last minutes of my existence as far as I was concerned. And but even giving up, I stayed conscious. They brought me into the intensive care ward. They actually went a little out of their way to bring me to the nearest hospital because they brought me to one that had a trauma center. And they figured that would improve the chances, which apparently it did. They rushed me into the operating room. They got me on a surgery table, and I was just surrounded by a maelstrom. And again, I'd given up, and I was just a bit of flotsam. That was the focus of all their attention, but they were all focused on the body, and they were focusing on their tasks at hand and what it is they had to do to save this body. And
Okay, hello people. I just want to say hi. Gotta do this for a few seconds. I apologize. Interesting story though so far, isn't it?
it was, like I said, very surreal. It felt like I was alone in that room, in spite of the fact that there were 8 other people and they're all running around, touching me, putting tubes in me. I mean, they found new openings where tubes just don't belong. And I had 2 chest tubes, and I won't go through the list. It was, I don't recommend it. The maelstrom was just, I felt like I was just in the eye of a hurricane. There was so much going on around me, and yet I was completely disconnected from it. It was, the single point that was just not moving, and just chaos was happening all around me. And so I remember them, at one point they were shoving in a chest tube, and the technician, which is something you never want to hear in a trauma surgery, is oops. Oops. Pulled it out, turn it around, put it in the correct way. And I mean, I was conscious for all of it. And it's not just conscious, I was, they kept saying, he's still with us. Because I guess they finally realized how much blood I'd lost. They said, he's still here, he's still with us. Yeah, he's still alive. No, he's still conscious. They were amazed by it. And I can't figure out why, because I wasn't even fighting at that point. I felt like I had, as far as I was concerned, I was already dead. And I felt like it was like they were seeing me still being conscious and were just in complete disbelief with it. At some point, there's either possibly blood loss, or maybe they finally drugged me to knock me out. But I eventually lost consciousness there. The next thing I was aware of in the chronological timeline was coming to in the intensive care ward. I heard beeping. It was in a dark room. It was about 12 hours later. And I was hooked up to machines and the flashing lights and the beeping. And it was like I was dreaming again. I didn't know where I was. And I realized I was alive. And I became angry. And I didn't know why.
Okay, he became angry and didn't know why. Well, there's a reason for that anger, and it kind of coincides with the other people out there who have felt they got kicked out of, God's kingdom. Okay. And they're back here. They're a lot of them go through the depression, they go through anger and all sorts of emotions when they get shoved back into their body. And this man is not the exception. It falls right in line with the other.
I didn't at that time remember my experience. It actually came to me a few days later, but at that point I was angry. I felt betrayed and I felt hurt and
keyword betrayed. I felt betrayed. Now, the key thing to keep in mind here is I don't think it was towards his brother, because he kind of clarifies that in a little while. So where is the betrayal coming from? Quite possibly the brother, but also due to being kicked out of what he sees as God's kingdom.
As though I was rejected, and it didn't make sense to me at the time.
Yeah.
And it was just, at that point was the first point where I no longer was worried about dying. Now I'm worried that I'm going insane. I couldn't understand my own emotions. The intensive care nurse, probably summoned by the machines, came in a little while after I'd come to, maybe a minute or two, and informed me that I'd actually died twice on the table as they were trying to resuscitate me. I died a second time, and she said that they were amazed when they finally stabilized me, because nobody in there was expecting me to survive. They fought for quite a while, apparently, before they managed to get me at a point where they could move me into the intensive care ward. The look in her eyes when I came to, I'm not even sure if they were expecting me to become conscious anytime soon, but she was beside herself with the outcome.
The big part's
and I
coming.
realized that she was voicing what a lot of the nurses on staff, the doctors would never tell you. The nurses will tell you when they're surprised. Doctors are God. I shouldn't say that in a hospital, should I? Howard's gonna go out. The next few days, I had clergy come in. I had last rites. I had very close family friends that were escorted in with my family, and the family members would come in. And a few people asked me, my brother-in-law was one, asked me, do you remember anything when you were dead? And I said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. The whole idea of NDEs was so alien to me, I'd never even given it any thought in my life. Because again, I was Catholic. I had to follow the Catholic line, and everything was already planned out. I never had to even question it. If I wanted to know what to think about it, I just had to ask. But not against Catholicism, because it's a great religion, and I still feel great kinship to it. But in any case, no judgment. When I was having visitors coming in for the first few days, and I was only conscious for maybe 3 out of every 24 hours. I was so heavily medicated. I had a constant morphine drip, and wasn't eating or anything else at that point. And so the dream state just continued. It expanded, and it was within those first 3 days that a friend of mine, who is a very good friend, a very aggressive young man who had his own view of the way the world works, said, of course you're angry. When I shared my feelings with him, he said, of course you felt betrayed. Of course you felt hurt. Your brother, it just makes perfect sense. I'd be angry too. Your brother's gonna wish that he finished the job, as far as I'm concerned. The police better not release him, because I'm gonna deal with them if they do. And this is the type of friends I had at the time. Doesn't speak well for me either. But he gave me an excuse, and I took it, because nothing else made sense. It was that, or accept the fact that I'm missing a huge piece of the puzzle, or I'm crazy. Because I couldn't understand why I felt such betrayal and such hurt. It didn't feel right, though. I didn't feel like it was attached to my brother. It felt bigger than that, and I didn't understand. I continued through my stay there. In 3 days, they sent me out of the intensive care ward and sent me to the regular ward. A few days after that, some friends from work heard that I was getting regular visitors now and started coming in. And so a whole new wave of well-wishers came and came to look at the body. And I got the impression, none of them, when they said, "How are you doing?" I learned from experience to just give them answers like, "Well, the doctor says my white cell count is going up. I'm working on my incentive spirometer, and I'm going to have less trouble breathing soon." And I'm talking about physical descriptions, and I'm talking about how my body's doing. And that's what they were asking for, and I gave them that answer, and they moved on. And another visitor would come in, and finally a friend of mine from work came. And she came and she asked me how I was doing. And I started in with my rehearsed spiel, started talking about my white cell count. She said, no. She interrupted me. She said, "How are you doing?" And I realized she was looking at me with depth. She was looking into my eyes. And it was kind of mesmerizing. As I looked back into her eyes, I realized she was talking to me, not my body. And as I was starting to grasp that, the reaction had already kicked in, and I said, "Well, my brother's going to wish that he finished the job when I get out here." And meaning I was going to go, basically following my friend's script. And she looked at me aghast, and she said, "I cannot believe that I'm hearing this. This is not the Steve I know." At that point, as I was looking into her eyes, she said, "This is not the Steve I know." It was like somebody turned on a fire hose. This is 6 days after I'd actually died. I spent those 6 days half conscious or angry, and I didn't know why. And suddenly the answer came to me in a torrent. I couldn't take it all in. It was coming in so fast. And all the memories of my NDE came through at that point.
Now, see, isn't that like a really interesting... It's an interesting one. I've heard of people picking up details through various things that kind of remind them, or certain information that they run across that triggers a memory that can kind of additionally add information to an NDE. Now, I will say, depending on the individual and what they're doing, like if someone is hawking a lot of books, trying to play guru and stuff like that, well, I mean, I've seen some really appalling things occur in the NDE community. Now, listen, there aren't many of them, but there's a few out there. And just, magically, every time a new book comes out, oh, added information. It just came to me. It was a download, and now I'm remembering this, and now I'm remembering that. I mean, some of the crap I've seen out there is crazy. And so this is different, okay? And other people who say things like they've got additional information, or maybe a large section that was likely memory wiped, comes to them, and sometimes that builds inspirations, like through music or art or books, whatever, any of this stuff. But so it's just an interesting one that there was a 6-day period, and that conversation, you're not the same Steve that I knew, is what triggers this experience to come flooding in. So he did say that he was in and out of consciousness and dealing with periods of anger. So it's likely that maybe he wasn't really all with it and fully back yet, I guess, so to say, even though he was coming in and out of the world, so to say. So, yeah, it's a really, really interesting one. I don't recall many of these. So, especially like that long of a delay. A lot of people, they know damn well what happened to them the minute they're back in the body, and they're usually Not happy about it.
And I realized why I was angry. I was on heaven's doorstep. I was standing in perfect beauty and perfect perfection. And I was sent back. And it was a wound far deeper than anything of my flesh. It was beyond what I was struggling with. And it hit me to the core. And it all made sense. I knew why I was angry. I didn't have time to dwell on it, though, because this flood came rushing into me as I remembered my experience. And it all took about 2 seconds, perhaps. Best guess. In our time. Physical time. It lasted about 2 seconds. And it was like somebody blindsided me. It felt like somebody tackled me from the side and I didn't see it coming. But I was looking into her eyes as she said, "This is not the Steve I know." And even those words resonate with me still to this day. I'll never forget that exact phrase, that quote, because it wasn't the Steve, whether or not she knew. That wasn't who I was. That wasn't why I was angry, and that wasn't what I was hurt about. I wasn't hurt about my body. My body was completely immaterial at that point, so to speak. The experience came flooding back, and I think you probably noticed it because I just had a space look in my eye, and we wrapped up the conversation, and I don't even remember how it ended, but she eventually left because I was just trying to soak it in, what had come through to me in those 2 seconds. And I need water. It's the experience itself was actually it's transcendental, it's existential, and it's completely minimalist in nature. I had an experience that best I can say is exercise in duality. As it came flooding back in, putting it again back in context, I'd lost consciousness on the operating table. They were struggling to keep me alive, and next thing I know, black. I saw nothing.
So see, I mean, I thought it was a really profound thing for him to say that. I felt like it was a test in duality. So it's in my eyes, he's realizing, likely subconsciously, or knew damn well, because remember, the memory wipe does exist with NDEs. I mean, he's proof of it. There was a 6-day gap. And I'm sure a lot more happened in almost all these NDEs that we are just not aware of, because that is a factor. It's a proven factor. It's been talked about. So we know it can occur. And we know it happens here. So maybe he knew in some way, but it's because of this transition period outside the body after we die and not being aware of our powers that we get into trouble. And he gives some more hints as we go along, but the test in duality was for him to stand his ground and assert himself to leave here, just like we're going to do at the time of natural death, to stand up for ourselves and do our own thing and not be subservient to some hierarchy out there that we know nothing about, that pretends to play the big bad boss or the loving boss, cloaked and deceiving us beyond belief and pawning itself off as God.
And the next thing I was aware of was the blackness was still there, but I was aware of it. And I looked around and realized there's no point in turning because I could see 360 degrees all around my body. But I didn't have a body. I was just a point of awareness. And I could see all the way around me, above and below. I had no center. I had no front. I had no dimension whatsoever. I was just a point in space.
See, like that to me, that sounds like the real us. That really feels like our core being. Like, so that is, this really connects with me. And I'm actually going to put a poll up about that too. Like, does this specific segment feel like that's who we truly are? I mean, obviously what happens later or shortly after this it doesn't apply. It's this specific moment.
There's a point of awareness. I looked around and realized there's no point in turning because I could see 360 degrees all around my body. But I didn't have a body. I was just a point of awareness. And I could see all the way around me, above and below. I had no center. I had no front. I had no dimension whatsoever. I was just a point in space.
So a point of awareness really feels. So let's see. Let's see what you guys think.
Space itself was more vast than the 3 dimensions we're used to here. I couldn't even begin to count them. It was like a barrel. You think of a space, but the barrel had no bottom. It had a depth. It just kept going and going. But it was just complete blackness all around me. And the darkness was, people say it's a dark NDE, and they're talking about the negative NDEs or the frightening NDEs or whatever label you want to put on it. This was the most beautiful experience in my entire existence that I'm aware of. I don't know if I had any before my life, but it was in darkness. And it's not a judgment or anything else. It's just, that's what it was. It was without form and void. It was completely lacking in anything aside from the darkness, myself, and infinite love. I was spinning, without moving. I was feeling like I had no point of reference. And I had no body. There was no mention, there was no meaning to scale, there was no meaning to color or shape, because there was no color or shape. It was just infinite blackness. And it was disturbing at first. But the thing that balanced it was the love.
Boom. It was disturbing at first. So this is him admitting concern and realizing the difference of where he just came from, his physical body, Earth, to pitch blackness. It's concerning. Well, what's going to happen? Roll out the welcome wagon. Here comes the light. Here comes the love to balance that out. So it turns into just, another snag from the light.
Love that I felt in that moment of eternity was so perfect, and the love was completely unconditional, and it was more than I could possibly take in, but yet I took it in, and it was directed at me, and it was coming from the other awareness that was there. The best I could.
It was directed at me and coming from another awareness.
More than I could possibly take in, but yet I took it in. And it was directed at me, and it was coming from the other awareness that was there. The best I can describe what I wasn't even a mind. I was a point of awareness. A mind has thoughts. A mind has the manifestations of the ego. The mind has so many things that we're so familiar with here. But what I was my raw essence there. It was beyond what we assume is our mind even. But I was still myself. I still had my history. I still had my personality. And
so he still had his history, because we've heard other people say and kind of make it sound like that didn't exist, but he kind of words it like the other NDEers. It's more like it's a different state. There's no concern for what you just left, but you have your memories. And that's really, really important to keep in mind, because we need that when we leave here. But remember, everything is embedded in your conscious, subconscious mind, and just your true essence inside you. So you'll have access to it. Mark my words. You just put that intention out there. You know, you want to have lucidity. You want to have all of your memories, and you want no interference whatsoever, audibly, visually, telepathically, whatever. All this stuff. You don't want any sort of interference when you're setting your directive to leave the matrix entirely.
It was, when you, not only did I not have a body, my own identity was stripped from me at that point. I still had my personality and I still had my history, but what I thought I wasn't there. It wasn't along for the ride, but yet there I was. It was, again, very disorienting. The space itself was disorienting, and the environment was disorienting. But that love was what held through, because it was constant, and it was coming from all directions, and it was unconditional. I didn't have a life review, per se. I didn't have a tunnel. I didn't have a life review, or at least that I remember when I came to, in that, what I call the void. It could have been halfway through my experience, for all I know. I just slept through the first day. I'm not sure. And, but I just came to in that darkness, and I was surrounded by this unconditional love. And I was aware that the darkness, not really the darkness, but I'll get to that later, was aware of me as well. I wasn't alone. The darkness felt like it was cradling me, like the mother would hold her child. And the mother doesn't look at her child, the perfect mother doesn't look at her child and see flaws. She just radiates it with love, and that's what I felt there. It was a very maternal aspect of God, if you will.
Of God. So he's using the term God right there. So it's an automatic assumption. Again, like we see this time and time again, that, you know, this love is emitted, the strongest love ever imaginable. And he is comparing it to a mother's love, but we've talked about many times, shown ridiculous examples, so many of them, where people are saying that it's more love than you can ever experience. It's the love of all loves. And you know, mothers will say it's even more love than the birth of their own child. And, or people say the day they got married, or what have you, you know, the pinnacle of a loving moments while here on earth can't be compared to what's experienced there. So love is automatically assumed to be God. All the time, over and over and over in these NDEs. Just because it's projecting love and giving you that euphoria rush, it's basically we're being drugged. Let's just call it what it is. And we're just going along with it. But the whole point is once you kind of reach that loving point with the light, I think it is very difficult to walk away from that. So the whole point is not to even get anywhere near that. Stay far, far away. As soon as you realize you're outside your body at the time of natural death, boom, out of here. And the whole, you know, thing we talked about in the past.
Eternal aspect of God, if you will. That's the feminine aspect, the first part of my experience. And it's dualistic. My awareness was also not only on the other awareness that was there, but the fact that I knew things I shouldn't know, or that I didn't know I already knew. I realized there was an awareness there. So I thought to ask it a question, to speak to it. And as the question came to my mind, I already knew the answer. And there wasn't even a need for telepathy because I already knew everything that I ever wanted to know. It was just a matter of focusing on it. And as I wanted to know something, not only what I wanted to know came through, but the fully abridged version of it with references to how that one little piece of the answer was fitted into the rest of creation.
Okay, so we've talked about it before, how people think that they're all-knowing when they have these experiences. They come back and make that claim. Again, something we've talked about a lot here, where I don't think that's the case at all. I think, again, like this is a construct that is involved within the inner layers, inner workings of the matrix itself. Remember, we're in their realms, okay? Just like we're in the realm right now that is controlled by them, and in this physical body, which limits us. Those realms in the astral, including that void-like state, the light, etc., and all the other realms, like with the breakthrough trips, all this astral projection, lucid dreaming, all this stuff, in my very strong opinion, falls under the construct of the matrix. So if those things are, even though like we can impact them and create in them and interact in them, it doesn't mean that we are the source of that creation or in control of it. Let's put it that way. Now, we may be able to edit and manipulate things, but I've seen cases where everything kind of reverts back, like where it's automatic. So like, say you want to move a lamp on a table in someone else's realm, just theoretically. Pick an item. Say you want to move a lamp on a table. You can do that and it'll move. But then after some time, it reverts back to where it was. It's like, keep the set in place. This is not your realm. You don't have full control. You can, have fun in it, manipulate it a little bit, but you're not in control. Just like with the astral, the void realms, and the light realm, and all these different things. So this is where the problem comes in. We're the away team, and the home team has the advantage every single time, and we're just kind of giving ourselves away. So please take this into consideration.
The rest of creation, every part of reality fit perfectly together. I felt connected to everything, even though I was completely in an empty space. I had no point of reference to where everything that I knew was, but I knew that every part of creation was part of me as well. And that connection was deeper than, I likened it to a machine where each of us are cogs within a machine. And how the machine would never run perfectly without all of its cogs in place. And that sometimes comes off as kind of demeaning. Okay, we're just cogs in a machine. But no, it's each part is integral to the entire whole. Each part is the whole. And the parts in that darkness are so hard to explain. But what I did know, because I've lost so much of it, I think a lot of that information was just beyond what our physical, chemical, biological brains can hold.
See, a lot of that was lost, admitting to the memory wipe. So we have an open admission here. A lot of that was lost. Yeah, I mean, granted, the level of perception is way different in the astral than it is here on Earth because of, like he said, we're very limited with our capacity here inherently because of the meat suit. So, I agree with him on that, but there's a reason why certain things in particularly are not allowed to be accessed by these experiencers or by us. And that's all by design and part of the Matrix Reincarnation, Soul Trap's inner workings and how it functions.
I don't think that information really fits within the 3 dimensions of our understanding of reality here. And so I just managed to pull through a little bit that I managed to glean onto. Okay, the cat's out of the bag. You know I'm not a public speaker.
Fine.
He's doing fine.
The feeling that everything is important, everything's part of the greater whole. It's something that the words just fall. They don't encapsulate how important that is. That it's all one, and we're all part of that one. That darkness that I was talking about was aware, but it was not a point of awareness. It was a field of awareness. It was the backdrop of reality. It was the essence. The darkness was just the color that was around me at the time. If you call it darkness, a color. The darkness itself wasn't what was holding me. It wasn't what was cradling me. It wasn't what was loving me, and it wasn't the source of the information. It was that field of awareness. For lack of a better word, I'll call it God. Unfortunately, that comes with a lot of baggage because people have meaning behind that word.
So he's talking about the field of awareness, and I like how he separates that there. I think that's cool, but the problem is it's still connecting to this God paradigm, and that kind of, again, if we're going by what he's saying and many others, like, we're all connected. Okay, let's just, for sake of argument, just say that's true. And make of that what you will. Okay? But if we're all connected, then why is there something that we have to answer to? Or possibly be bowing down to when we leave here? Why is something able to take advantage of us in such a way in this realm and pawn it off as God or loving or good or a mission or necessary or for the greater good, when that's clearly not what's going on here? It's so clear. And again, the past life regressions, life between lives, all these things, the whole list, I'm not going to go through everyone, but you guys know, all those things that we talk about, they don't line up. The near-death experiencers' accounts of who they perceive to be God and the guides and the soul groups and all this stuff, none of it matches with what's going on here whatsoever in any way. So I think it's just important that again, for the new people or those who are on the fence, please hang in there with this information. Just remember, keep it as a possibility that we've all been bamboozled. We've been tricked. We all consented, okay, to come into this experience and have it, and set our intention in a certain way and got caught up in it. But we keep coming back here under the veil of forgetfulness, lifetime after lifetime, not knowing, who we are, where we came from, why we are here, where we are going. And this goes on and on and on and on. And it's time for us to stand up for us. So if we're all connected, that doesn't mean we have to answer to something. So think about it. If the light is just conveniently God, and it's just sitting, it's ready to welcome us and recycle us back here. Right when we leave here, it's ready to throw us through the conveyor belt all over again. Come on. Think about it. Then we come down here again and our memories are wiped. What kind of scam is that? Come on, let's think logically, my friends. It's in our face. It's all there.
But that is the closest I can come to. It's a completely infinite in its vastness. And I guess now, for what is it? It doesn't mind. The information I had, the love, was just more than I could take in, like I said, but yet somehow it fit. But yet for some reason, I felt like there should be something more. Perhaps it was my Catholic upbringing, perhaps it was just expectations, what it was I was supposed to find, because I was realizing I am dead. And I was looking for an angel, I was looking for Jesus, I was looking for a form for that infinite love to take, and I didn't find anything. It was just a field, it was just open field, you know, like an electric field. It's not like a grass field. But it didn't take any form there. It was just its raw essence. It was just in its pure state. And I'll get to the possible meanings later, but I kept feeling like there should be something more. Where is everything? I felt my connection to everything, but I didn't know where it was, and I wanted to see it with these new eyes that didn't exist. And it's a lot of paradox involved in explaining an NDE, isn't there? But I kept looking, I kept searching and feeling, and that point of awareness that I wasn't an intelligence, I wasn't a person, so to speak, I wasn't a mind, it was just a point of awareness with a history and personality. And as that point of awareness reached out into the darkness, it was like an amoeba sending part of itself out. I wasn't actually seeing the darkness, I was experiencing it directly. Because there's no light, I can't see it, but being a point of awareness, I would actually extend myself into that darkness. And so, again, very hard to explain, but like an amoeba sending out parts of myself out to infinity, I just kept going. And I kept feeling that this darkness was infinite, and the field was infinite, but I never reached the end. And I searched in all directions because, again, location was only where I was, but I was just at one point within a field. And I kept trying to turn, but how do you turn when you don't have a front? You don't have a top, you don't have a bottom, left and right, and very little. But I kept trying to shift, and I'm not sure what I did, but I liken it to having one's head stuck in a vice and using your eyes darting back and forth, looking up and down, not being able to turn your head. And then suddenly the vice is released and my head shifted, and brought into a new perspective was the light. And
a surprise.
Brought into a new perspective was the light. And everything shifted. I'm not sure if it was passing through one of those multiple dimensions that space had there. Said it's surreal. It's really hard to explain. But there was a shift. And I don't know if it was I changed frequency or I tuned into another station, but suddenly there was something, there was a form, light, and the light had structure to it. The perfect purity of my experience had ended. I went into stage 2, which I still, to this day, wish I was in stage 1. I still was in a dark place, and I still felt that infinite love from all directions all around me. And I still felt at home. I still felt like I belonged.
Felt like I was at home. Felt loved. So you can see how this can really take advantage of us. Everybody wants to feel loved, right? Everybody enjoys the feeling of love. And they take advantage of our good nature, this system. I hate saying they, but the whole system, the parasites that run this whole clown show, take advantage of our good nature and bombard us with this love, and it pawns itself off as God. And we keep falling for it and falling for it and falling for it and falling for it before we even have a moment to collect ourselves and make rational choices about our well-being, not the phony God, not the deceased loved ones, not anyone down here, not anyone else involved with the soul group that we may have reincarnated with previously but didn't in the last incarnation, and on and on. No, it's about looking out for us, being selfish, and thinking about you for once in the most important moment of your existence, to free yourself, to take sovereignty and liberation into your hands as your guiding force, as your only guiding force. That's it. That's all it is, my friends.
Something else was there, the light. And the light was, whereas the darkness was very feminine, the light was very masculine. And the darkness shared the love, but the light shared glory. And the light that I saw was really hard to explain. The structure of it was like, if you've seen a pane of glass lit from the end, the entire pane glows. If you take a point in space and just call that the center, there's nothing there. But then you place panes of glass, infinite panes of glass around that point where the panes would cross. They would cross through one another, and there'd be a little streak of light like the edge of that pane of glass that always glows a little bit brighter than the pane itself. But that streak would go out to infinity because these are infinite panes of glass, hypothetically. And they all crossed about the same point, same distance away from the central. So it had a glow to it that reached out to infinity. And that glow was also streaked through with these crystalline-like lines, these little ribbons of light that reached out to infinity. And I'm not sure if there's any meaning to the structure that it had, but it was very crystalline in nature. And every pane was roughly the same distance from the center, and it felt so bright, like it almost familiar to me. To this day, I don't know if I was looking at an electron up close, or if I was looking at the entirety of creation. I don't know if each of those panes was a different parallel universe. I don't know what the scale was. I didn't even have a body still. So it didn't mean anything to me how large this was. Within each of those panes, to make it even more complicated, within each pane was little fireflies. Whereas the panes were glowing this milky, soothing white color, the little fireflies were rainbow. They were multiple different colors. They were all moving and swirling. The crystalline structure as a whole, those panes weren't moving relative to one another toward the center, but the little fireflies were dancing within those panes. And where the two panes would cross, where you'd have that little ribbon of light, the ones that were crossing on one side were mirrored on the other side. And I just saw like wheels within wheels. There was a depth to the structure, to the pattern, to the plan of the whole dance. And it was happening on an infinite scale. And I'm not sure what that center was, and I don't know what the panes were, and I don't even know what the fireflies were, but it all seemed to be familiar to me at that point. And whereas when I was in the darkness, I had all knowledge. I just think about something, and I knew exactly not only what I wanted to know, but how it fit in with everything else.
So let's just rewind that really quickly. I think it's a really important point. Go back 20 seconds here.
I don't even know what the fireflies were, but it all seemed to be familiar to me at that point.
I don't know what the fireflies were to me, but it seemed all familiar.
And whereas when I was in the darkness, I had all knowledge.
Where when I was in the darkness, I had all knowledge.
I just think about something and I knew exactly not only what I wanted to know, but how it fit in with everything else.
And how it fit in with everything else. Now, again, I felt like, because why is there a separation there? He's like, it seems like there's a separation between, you know, the void-like state where he's claiming to be all-knowing versus the state that is the fireflies, the orbs, the light. Okay, so is that what's kind of throwing him off? Is that what's kind of tilting him off his game? Sucking him in by its appeal? By the loving energy? Because he's clearly making some sort of distinction there, right? At least that's the way it seems.
I couldn't behold all of creation at the same time. I think only God could do that. But I felt how each part fit in with the whole. And I knew so much. But when I was looking at that light, the only thought that I could hold in my mind, if you will, was wow. It was just awe. And it was like time had again stopped. And I don't know how long I was looking at that light, but it was like I lost myself in that light.
Boom. It was like I lost myself in that light. See, I mean, it's a very different NDE. Like a lot of it kind of resonates within me, and then a bunch of it is like, oh, you know, like, but it seems again like once that light comes into play, that's when like it's open season on us. It's like it's almost impossible to resist. I think it frankly is. It's so overwhelming and powerful that we just get entranced by it. I mean, really, just remember, think about what he just said.
And I don't know how long I was looking at that light, but it was like I lost myself in that light.
See, it was like I lost myself in that light.
And that looked into it. What the essence was on the shelf, because I was just beholding that light.
See, his essence, what little he had left, was on the shelf in beholding to that light. Really, talk about boom, truth bomb right here. This is open admission of what we're dealing with. So, yeah, oof.
And as I looked into it, what the essence of what I was, what had been kind of put on the shelf, because I was just beholding that light. That's all I was at that moment. The point of awareness with only one thing to be aware of. And that's where the experience ended, because the next thing I knew, I felt like I was being pushed back. Some people talk about being pulled back into their body, but for me, it was a very distinct feeling of being caught up in a tide and being shoved back. And again, no communication with the light. Even the darkness, I never even had to ask a question. I still don't know to this day why I came back, but that feeling of being pushed back almost felt like rejection. And that's when I came back into my body. And the feeling of coming back to my body is something that I'll never forget. because it was the most horrible feeling I've ever had.
I
It
bet.
felt like I was being shoved through a screen door without the screen door opening first. It felt like I was being
horrible.
shoved through a sieve, like a meat grinder, and I was ripped into a million pieces and then shoved back into this other form on the other side.
Oh,
Form was like a mason jar, like a jelly jar or a mayonnaise jar. And it was cold, and it was hard, and it was in pain, and far too small to encapsulate what I had become there.
exactly. And that's what the point is. It's like, why are we going to condense ourselves into exactly what he just said, this human meat suit in his terms, and continue this charade? Why? But we have a mission, right? We have a mission. We have a purpose to all this. We have missions to fulfill and life scripts to fulfill and karma to pay off and all this other stuff. No. The answer is no. I do not consent. I don't consent. It's over. It's over. Hashtag last timers.
And I felt like I was just crammed back in, and maybe little pieces were shoved back into, or maybe that's where the information is that I lost. But I felt like myself when I was on the other side. But then suddenly I came back in what I'd already always thought was myself, and it was strange. I wasn't myself anymore. And jumping again back into the timeline as it actually happened, that's when I came to in the intensive care ward, and that's where I felt those feelings of loss, the feelings of anger, and the feelings of betrayal. And I'd had everything that I'd ever wanted in my life, and so much more that was beyond what I was aware of being possible in life, and it was taken away, and not just removed from me, like taking a knife from a child, but I was pushed away from it.
See? It was taken away from me. And he's saying he was pushed away. You know, and again, his interpretation and a number of these NDEers out there feel like they got kicked out back down here into a body by God and God's whole kingdom. That is very difficult. It's a very difficult thing to come back to. And talk about the level of guilt, especially if someone has that background, the religious background that kind of ties right into it. Oof, that has got to be tough. Even without it, throw it all away. If you still feel like, you know, what you dealt with was God and that they kicked you out, pushed you back, said no, and sent you back in, think about his description, the mason jar, the mayonnaise jar, and being tossed through like a screen window with the door shut, and it being cold and condensed, and it can't possibly be comparable to what he just came from. Again, yeah, but God loves you, right? God's all loving. Yeah, that's a really loving action, isn't it?
From a child, but I was pushed away from it, and I was pushed back into that body that was so racked with pain. That's the experience.
Okay, so the next segment, we're at an hour and 25 minutes, went way over tonight, but I'm going to go into the next section, which will be question and answers. A lot of really interesting questions that the audience asks him, so just hang in there a little bit with me, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes. I look forward to seeing you all again shortly. Hang in there, got some more to come. patience, my friends, and welcome back. All right, let's get back into this here. So we are going to head on over to I believe the question and answer segment's coming up next. Might be a little bit more from him. Let's see.
It sounds really mundane to go from that to talk about my recovery.
Oh, that's right.
Do that. In any case, I did survive. Dark there. As far as I know, I actually have a question. I've wondered whether or not this is just some dream or something I'm having. I've questioned it because after the experience, everything seems so two-dimensional. It seems so shallow. And even though when I came back, I felt like I had one foot in each world. I felt still connected to everything, and I knew where these things were now. Back when I was feeling connected to these things, I couldn't see where they were when I was dead. But now I was back in the flesh. I could see things, but I would feel that connection with them. Another thing about the darkness, when I was in that state, the feeling of connection to everything, and I also felt that feeling of love that was showering on me, and it wasn't indiscriminately radiating like light from the sun. It was directed at me. It was personal. And it was a connection between me and that field. And when I would think about how I was connected to everything else, I would also feel how that love was radiating from that field to the rest of creation as well. And I realized what the meaning of unconditional love was. It wasn't just radiating out, and we just had to go around and collect whatever it is we could get. It was directed at us personally. It's a personal relationship with the universe, if you will, which has other connotations. It's hard to name God, isn't it? But that feeling of being connected to everything and feeling that love direct specifically at me, I also felt from the field's perspective, sharing that love with all of the rest of creation. And I felt almost as though I was loving the entire universe by proxy. And I think it was a good experience for me coming back into this life, because afterward I still feel a connection to everyone. I'm still a bit of a social dwarf, if you will. I still don't feel comfortable getting up here and talking as I'm sure it comes across. But I still love everyone in creation. And I'm not comfortable with that feeling because of my previous life, before Friday the 13th in October of 95. But the sentiment is there, and I'm fumbling with trying to come across and share that. And much like describing the light, it's so hard to describe that love. And I do my best, and I know it falls flat. The other effects, again, I had one foot in each world when I came back. I felt like I belonged there. I was standing on 2 feet. Most of my weight was on 1 foot. Unfortunately, that foot wasn't in this world. I felt like I was just kind of sort of here, but not really here. I don't feel like I'm actually in this world. I feel like I'm still there. From that foot in that world, I started sensing spirits. And it was actually kind of shocking when I first started seeing auras. I thought it was actually a problem with the medication I was on or something, because everything was fuzzy, and I could still see clearly what was behind the blur, but it was, I never actually saw colors, which is weird. I very rarely see colors, but it was just kind of a blur, a haze. It looks like the heat waves rising off the hood of a car on a hot day. I don't know if you have that here, but we do have that in California. We have hot days. But yeah, it had that mirage look to it. And that's what I could see with the auras. All of a sudden, and it didn't make sense. I thought there was something wrong again. Seeing things clearly can be kind of disturbing when you don't know what clearly means. It also, one of the after effects is that I sometimes, actually all the time at first, would feel the emotions of people around me. I'd be in a room and I'd feel angry, and I'd feel humor, I'd feel love, I'd feel various emotions that, again, I started thinking I was going insane because it didn't make sense why I'm feeling two completely conflicting emotions at once. And it took me about 3 years before I realized I'm taking up other people's emotions. And I became an empath, and it scared the heck out of me. I mean, I'm an introvert. Don't deal well with my own emotions before all this, and suddenly I'm getting broad spectrum reality. And it was more than I could take in, and I eventually got to the point where I could turn it down and actually have trouble turning it back on sometimes. But IONS groups are one place where I feel comfortable enough to be able to do that. The after effects of the stabbing, anyway, will go back to the physical, pay homage to the body. I had a lot of recovery. The nerve plexus in my shoulder caused permanent nerve damage, and my chest was literally being held together with staples because they had to massage my heart to bring me back.
God loves you, though.
And the body that I came back to was just riddled in pain, but yet, and all that anger and that feeling of betrayal and such, as within those 2 seconds when I saw that light, it evaporated. That clarity came through with me at that moment. I had to actually understand where the pain came from, and once I understood that it was the loss of my NDE, that was the loss of being in that place, that was the cause of all that negativity, that once I realized that, it was like that negativity just evaporated in an instant. I liken it to dropping something into a blast furnace or dropping a block of ice into the sun, and it just evaporated, not even leaving mist behind. And it was just gone. And I think it's because as I was re-experiencing that light, everything that I was gone. All that negativity evaporated with it. And I know I'm all over the field here. In any case, that's my experience and what led up to it. The after effects I'm still trying to deal with. I don't have answers for anyone. I don't have my own answers. I can't get up here and say that I know anything. I mean, the wisdom of the fool might not set you free. It's less likely to enslave you than the wisdom of a learned man. But all I have to offer you is the wisdom of a fool. I don't know anything.
It might enslave you. Yeah. I mean, what I like about this man is, he's just telling his experience and not really getting all guru-y on you, but at the same time, he still has the pre-baked ideas that we learn here and interpret as God, and that experience has kind of placed itself into him. And, as creator beings, we have that ability to put that out there, and that's his interpretation of it. But he's also very honest about things, and that, he's just a regular guy. This is what happened to him. This is what he thinks. And he doesn't want to expand upon it too far, but in the same breath, he's done that a little bit already. But remember, the guy's had a near-death experience, right? You got to cut him a little slack. Again, like, my heart goes out to all these people. I feel really, really bad that anyone has to suffer like that and in turn come back to such a degraded state, let alone here.
The fool might not set you free. It's less likely to enslave you than the wisdom of a learned man. But all I have to offer you is the wisdom of a fool. I don't know anything. I've been in a place where I did, and I'm so aware of how much I've lost. The Sorry. That's okay. I've been to such height. I've lost it. 6 days later, I remembered it. I was in such pain, but yet having just the memory of that was so pure and so beautiful that the pain became two-dimensional just by remembering it. Just the memory of that reality, that truth, what really is. Pain didn't mean anything in comparison afterward. I recovered. I forgave my brother because, well, first of all, I understood that the pain wasn't from my brother, but also because I understood how much God loved him. I understood how much this shell that people had been talking to me as this shell for so many days wasn't really me. That schizophrenia that caused my brother to pick up that knife wasn't my brother. He was a different point of awareness that was seeing the world through a filter. He was seeing the world through a flawed lens, but it's not who he is. And so much of what we think we are, myself included, even now, is not who we are. We are something pure. We are something that is, we're all interconnected, and we're all part of a greater whole. And again, words are just going to fail. I can't explain it. I think I'm going to have to stop. I think I've covered pretty much all of it.
Okay, so this is the Q&A coming up.
Questions and answers. And the first hand up.
So I know you don't feel like you have any answers, but did you, get any revelations why it happened this way, or why you were, stabbed by your brother, or, did you get any universal historical context?
Okay, to reiterate, the question is, do I understand the big picture?
Yeah.
Do I understand what the meaning of life is? No. I'm a bit of flotsam. I'm trying my best to go with the flow, to ride the wave, but I am not, I've completely given up on trying to direct it. I realize how futile that is, and even understanding it is beyond my human capacity to do. That answers it.
Yes.
Like, the second hand up, I believe.
As you told your story, I was reminded a lot of the Fisher King story. Where Percival comes on a spit, fish roasting on a spit, and he's hungry and there's nobody in the camp. And takes a piece of the fish to eat, and he burns his fingers trying to pick up this fish, and drops it on the ground and puts his fingers in his mouth to massage the wound. And he gets a taste of the fish in his mouth. And that's leads him on this quest for the rest of his life of understanding. And by hearing your story, a lot of that search, and a lot of times these things happen, the main reason that you're standing here now. You wouldn't be standing here now if that thing hadn't happened. So I think it's a part of the journey. It's all part of the story that maybe this is part of the journey in this life. Stand right there.
I think you're probably right. God knows I'm not comfortable up here. But yet he keeps directing me to get up and talk to people. But I don't have any answers. I don't have any idea what I'm doing. And I guess the best message I can give you is that nobody does. People who claim to know the answer, people who claim to have compacted the infinite mind of God within their small cranium are either lying or insane. It's so much bigger than that. And even when you do have a piece of the truth, it goes so much deeper and so far beyond that best we can do is just get a flavor for it, get the basic hue of it, but we'll never embrace that color, never embrace that on the side. But it's there. It's waiting for us there. And we will be back in unity, in unity with the whole. And it will be ours. I'm sure.
When people ask you questions, would you answer the question before putting the
I'll try. The Bishop King was hard to. I waited that long before I made the executive decision. Yes. Thank you.
This isn't a question, it's a comment. I just wanted to let you know how deeply your descriptions touched me, because the first description that you shared with us about being in this dark space, not being aware of your body, and yet feeling this feminine type love. I've never had a near-death experience, but I had this unusual dream following the conclusion of a very painful employment. I'm a full-time professional nanny and house manager, and little did I know that the family that I was with at the time was deeply troubled. That came out during the course of employment. The mother discovered that her husband had been hiding chronic alcoholism from her and an addiction to diet pills. And things became unraveled for the family after the birth of twin girls. They had already had a 3-year-old. And it was a horrific experience for me, because he had what could be understood as a breakdown with the stresses of his increased family, and he became verbally abusive toward me, paranoid. It was an awful situation, and the daily stresses toward the end actually created a serious physical illness within me. And when I left that family, I was heartsick because I loved the children dearly. I was horribly angry without feeling like I could resolve it. I was grief-stricken. I was frightened for them. And it was either the next day or very shortly afterwards that I had this dream. And I've never had a dream similar to this. It was so similar to yours that I felt that I just needed to share that with you. I dreamed that I was also in total blackness with no awareness of my body. And I couldn't see anything else. There were no words spoken, but I felt unseen hands, and somehow I knew that they were removing shackles from my body. And it was so comforting when I awakened, because I felt like some shackles had been removed. And I still, to this day, am processing what happened with that family. But I was so grateful when I awakened for that experience, because I felt totally loved also. And I just wanted to let you know that in that respect, our two experiences were so similar. And there is that all-encompassing love there. And
I don't have to repeat that. It's wonderful how all experiences are really one experience. We're all having the same experience. The description you're giving with shackles being lifted off through that release, it's how the realization of how much we are Jacob Marley from Christmas Carol, how we have these shackles on us that we put on ourselves. But unlike from the Christmas Carol, we have the choice to just let them go and to put them aside, and we can liberate ourselves. But it's up here, we are enslaved. We keep from feeling connected to each other because we want to have that separation and comfort. And we choose to judge others before they can judge us. And all these shackles that we put on ourselves are totally unnecessary and not natural. It's not who we're supposed to be. But yeah, it's and your experience is very similar to mine. And I believe many others. The language changes, the words we use, probably better than mine, are things that we have a hard time seeing past. But there is one truth. There is one unity. There is one whole. There is one essence where everything fits. There is one home where I was so briefly once, and it felt like I was that cog in the machine that if I was removed, it wouldn't work the same way again. And I don't know why I came back, and I don't know why I went there in the first place. But I'm okay with it. I don't control it. And it's just a matter of trusting that there's a reason for it. And we just have to really let go of those shackles, and everything will work out as it's supposed to. Thank you. To the next. I'm sorry. Yes.
Steve, I've got news for you. You are a public speaker. How long after your experience did it take for you to begin talking about it to others? And what was it that made you feel it was okay to do that?
I think the question is, if I can paraphrase, what the heck got me up here to talk about this in the first place? I actually was silent about it when I first had my experience. It was a few days after I'd had it, or after I remembered it, I should say. Time has no meaning in NDEs in general. Mine is even harder to say because it actually happened in hindsight. But it was a few days later that I tried sharing my experience with my family, and the dipping my toes in the water, I realized how cold the reaction was, and I withdrew. And it took me 11 years before I actually tried sharing with someone else. My family was, again, structured in their thinking, and my experience just didn't fit. And they didn't know how to catalog it. They didn't know which cubby to place that information in. So it just kind of fell on deaf ears. And it took me 11 years before I actually found IANS and the local group that I go to in Orange County, Southern California. And I came there, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was almost home again. And I felt like there were people there that understood. As I was telling my story, and I looked out and I saw people nodding when I was saying things that didn't make sense to me. I mean, I was trying to find words for things, and they're just nodding because they're not listening to the words. The words were just getting in the way. And as I described things, they nodded in recognition, and they understood. And if there's any NDEs out there, I swear you really got to come to more meetings. I'm sorry, the next.
So I have two questions. Somehow when you were in that dark void, you said that you had all the answers. So how did you know that? I mean, did you ask the questions? Or could you have asked questions while you were there? Would you have told you while you were there?
The question was, when I was in the dark void, how did I know that the darkness had all the answers? It was, okay, to be honest, I don't know that it had all the answers. But every single thing that I thought of, I felt mirrored in that darkness. Even about me personally, it knew everything about me. It knew things about me that to this day I don't know about myself. It was the Akashic record tied to the mind of God, tied to so many different understandings. I mean, that was the foundation of all knowledge, was in that. And there were parts of it that reflected on me. And as I was thinking about the bad things I'd done in life, and I thought about all my shortcomings, and I thought about how I'd done wrong things. And again, I didn't have a life review where these were shown to me. But as I look back on them, having all this knowledge of even myself, that unconditional love stayed at that infinite level. There was no holding back, considering any of these things that I'd done. It was just completely unconditional love. But the knowledge that I got just about myself, as I looked at that, it was kind of like looking in my friend's eyes, which triggered the experience to come back in the first place. I saw a reflection of myself. And as I knew these things, I also sensed that that field, as a mere point within that field, a single point of awareness within the field of awareness, was aware of it. It was aware of so much more at all at the same time. And it's kind of a good portion of it is kind of an intuitive thing. I felt it, I knew it, but it wasn't anything that I can actually say this is the reason why.
Mm-hmm. And then also, what happened to your brother?
The question is, what happened to my brother? He wound up going to jail. It took 13 months, and that's a whole other side story. I have 3s and 13s happening all over through my experience, and it just kind of makes me believe there is a plan. But my brother went to jail for 13 months, and when he came up to court, when his court date came around, his family got up, including myself, and pleaded that he not be charged with the attempted murder that they were originally trying to charge him with. And they actually, instead of putting him in prison for many, many years, they wound up putting him into a hospital where they made sure that he was taking his medication. And when they finally got the balance right, he was willing to stay on it. And we still have holidays together. I see him maybe once a month, and it's I can't say it's like it never happened. My entire family, I think that's part of the reason why my family couldn't really accept it, was because when I look back on that day, I see the beauty and the wonder and the understanding and the love. And when they look back on that day, they see the blood and they see the pain and they see my brother being sent off to jail and they see me dying. And they couldn't understand how I saw the entire thing as beautiful. And even now, even with all the pain that happened, I see the entirety of it as beautiful. I'm sorry. You. No. The woman in the scarf.
I just wondered how you reintegrated. Do you have like a regular job, or what do you do? You don't have to say what you do. You have a normal life.
The question is how I'm reintegrated,
Right.
and whether or not I have a regular job. I have a really boring job, actually. The integration still hasn't come. Perhaps because I'm dyslexic and I have a learning disability and I don't pick up on things quite as quickly as some. 7 years wasn't enough for me. I mean, I'm on year 14. I'm 14 years old, by the way, as of October. I started over. That's how I explain the acne. The throat's closing up. But as far as the job goes, I was in retail at the time. That was when I had my day off. I had my experience. And after that, I stuck it out for a little while longer. I didn't see how jobs were important in the wider field of things. And so I stuck it out, just kind of survival. And after a while, I wound up going back to school and taking some drafting courses. And I wound up becoming a drafter, partly perhaps because of my understanding of space. Higher dimension, I can see things in my head now, whereas before it was kind of, drafters tend to see things in 3 two-dimensional pictures of something seen from different sides. For me, I can see it all in 3 dimensions all at the same time. So I figured, hey, maybe I should use this. So I wound up becoming a drafter. And, well, now I'm out of work. As are the times. I'm sorry, who was next?
Hi.
I'm sorry, I'm going with the hand I see first.
My question is, did you have chance to talk to your brother about this everything what happened? And what was his explanation?
The question is whether or not I had a chance to talk to my brother and what was his explanation. I'm assuming you're referring to as for the reason for the stabbing. I did have a chance to talk to my brother, as well as I heard from various sources, including my mother, about what he was telling the police as well. And the stories varied. Schizophrenia is such that whereas all of us have a very dim view of reality, we all can't make out the definition of what's really there. Schizophrenics are seeing it through a shattered lens as opposed to just a hazy one. His view changed when he was originally picked up by the police. He was explaining to them, because at the time my father was ill, he was explaining to them that I had cast a spell on my father, and that by attacking me, he wasn't attacking me, he was attacking the spell. So that was one version, and I think.
So it was a spell on his father. Let's just hear that one more time, because that's, yeah, we'll get into the life script part in a minute here.
View changed when he was originally picked up by the police. He was explaining to them, because at the time my father was ill, he was explaining to them that I had cast a spell on my father, and that by attacking me, he wasn't attacking me, he was attacking the spell.
Okay, so yeah, so basically he an entity cooked up something in his brother's head to gather the perception that Stephen was the one casting a spell. I mean, that's some entity shit right there. That's total entity interference, and I can only imagine what is going on in the brother's head, what he's being told in that moment. I mean, use your imagination. It's, you know, take care of your brother. He's harming your father. There's a spell. You got to destroy the spell. You know, so really, it's this is how this stuff works. Again, check out my interviews with Jerry Marzinski over on Odyssey. There's a link to the Odyssey account inside the description and the About tab.
So that was one version, and I think there were actually a total of 3 different versions, but that's an example of what he was actually telling the police. In any case, it was completely detached from what was actually happening, and that was his reality. And we all share a reality, but we never have it from the same view. And his was just a little bit further outside the norm.
And means he was aware that he was trying to kill somebody. He was not pushed by any other force. Yeah?
Whether or not he was
Aware.
External force, like a demon or something.
okay.
Yes.
Whether or not he was aware that he was attacking somebody, and whether or not it was from an external force, he from the time was saying that he was willfully attacking something, but he didn't. What he told the police was that it was a spell that he was trying to break. He didn't see it as he was attacking a human being. So yes and no. He saw it. He was the one charged. It wasn't a demon involved. It was him making that choice to do that, but he didn't believe he was attacking a person.
Okay, so likely what occurred, in my estimation and opinion, not saying, again, no medical advice here, I'm just saying what I feel is being represented here is that the brother probably didn't even see Stephen for Stephen. Like, he probably looked like something else. Stephen was a representation of the spell and probably cloaked as looking like something else. And then, of course, the entity's chirping in the brother's head. I mean, I mean, this is what's great about being in a Q&A with this type of group is that you're going to get questions like that because they've looked into this stuff. They're aware that, the mainstream narrative isn't likely as presented. So yeah, really, really fascinating stuff. So just rewind just a little bit on that one.
We saw it. He was the one in charge. It wasn't a demon involved. It was him making that choice to do that, but he didn't believe he was attacking a person. Okay, you on the aisle.
First of all, I agree, you are a good speaker, so don't feel bad about that. You said that when you were in the dark space, that you felt this immense, all-encompassing love, and that we were all connected. When you came back into your body and you're functioning in this world, can you connect that with the way you look at people? Are you able to feel love for everyone because you feel this connection? Or is this world sort of a filtering where it stops what you went through to come through?
Okay, the question is whether or not I still feel the connection that I felt during my experience, and whether or not I still feel that love for everything.
Everybody.
And everything and everybody. The answer is yes. I still feel it. I still feel that connection. I still have bad days. I still have frustration, sometimes dealing with traffic and other things in the moment that distract us from that. But even so, in the background, it's always there. I'm aware now that that love that's radiating from that field, from God, is always there, even if we're not aware of it. And it doesn't let up. It's, I believe, the reason it's the thing that's holding up reality, if you will. If that were to stop, I don't think everything would evaporate, like those negative feelings. I saw that light in the first place. It would just be gone. I think that we are being sustained by that love. We were created from it. And it is who we are.
Hey, boom. Created from it. Here, listen to this again.
Everything would evaporate, like those negative feelings. I saw that light in the first place.
So he's talking about how all of the negative feelings towards his brother were just evaporated once the light came into play.
I think that we are being sustained by that love.
We are being sustained by that love. Now, what I wanted to mention, oh man, I think the thought just slipped out of my head. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to rewind it to remember it because it's kind of an important. I can't believe it.
Everything would evaporate, like those negative feelings. I saw that light in the first place. It just be gone. I think that we are being sustained by that love. We were created from it.
Okay, so again, the whole euphoria rush and subservient type of direction or bowing down to the light is ridiculously powerful. And it can make us do all sorts of things that we're not lucidly aware of because we're drugged up. Okay, we're being drugged by some outside force that is trying to have its way with us and get us to keep coming back here, or at least, at a minimum, be a cog in the wheel of the matrix in some way. Now, what's interesting is what you see here lines up with many of the deathbed visions and visitations. So someone's on their deathbed. I'm talking about specifically, usually someone who has something burning inside them. Like, for instance, we've talked about some cases where a person, a child grew up in a very abusive situation. Excuse me, very abusive situation, and leave their house at like 16, 18 and never look back, don't even contact their parents or their parents, whoever was responsible for the abuse. And then on their deathbed, well, looky who shows up. Well, it's, dad or mom. who abused you, or whoever, adopted parents, grandparents, doesn't matter. Whoever you know really did you wrong, and you wanted nothing to do with them for the rest of your adult life. And they are the ones that appear. I'm not saying in every case. I'm talking about in some of the cases like this that occur. Then what happens is they deal with the same thing, a light. And even the ones who, we're going to say it's both ends of the spectrum. You have the ones who have, but the reason why it's so it stands out to me is because of his case in relation to what happened to him, while comparing it with the cases of children who basically left home, 18 years old, didn't deal with the parent or parents for the rest of their life until on their deathbed, magically mom and dad appear and try to, mend the bridge and make things right. But what's involved with that? A light. They appear, they're having full-blown conversations. Sometimes people in the room don't see anything, and the person is sitting in their hospice bed or at their home and looking in the corner or looking at the end of the bed, talking to something that they perceive to be their parents in the form of some light. And as they're going out, they're looking like in a corner or somewhere and absolutely enthralled with the light. And it's love, it's God, it's Jesus, it's Buddha, it's Muhammad, it's mom and dad. And there's a forgiveness period that occurs before the person leaves. It's a way for them to wrap up this lifetime and let all of that bad shit that happened to them, even though they didn't deal with them for 60, 70 years, let's just say they lived till 80, okay? They didn't deal with their parents for over 60 years. And all is forgiven like that. Like that. Snap of a finger. Well, what's involved with that? Love bomb, feeling good, and reconciliation. It's the same damn thing. Same thing. Because he says the light evaporated the bad feelings towards my brother. Boom. See, huge connection there. Massive.
And it is who we are, not just what we were made from, but it's what keeps us going. In the back, I'm neglecting the back.
This lady just kind of asked my question. I was basically, like you said, when you went to the other side, you said that everything, when you saw the light, everything was smashed like dropping an ice cube onto the sun. It all was forgiven and you felt perfect, love, which is what, it's sometimes people explain God as is perfect love, infinite perfect love. And I was going to say, when you came back to this side, you said you were leaning towards the other side, but you found yourself, stuffed into a mason jar. And, you said you still have your bad days. I was going to say, is it a struggle with your ego? Do you form resentments against others, or, like you said, you have your bad days? I mean, do you still get angry with people and form resentments, or has this experience connected you and held you, sustained you?
Okay. The question is how, regarding the change afterward, do I still have those feelings of anger, and do I still feel like I'm still standing mostly in that world? I feel almost as though most of me is still there. The vast majority of what I am isn't here. This is not who I am. These are just the atoms that I'm maintaining for the time being. They're on loan to me. It's not who I am. I don't feel angry, actually, with people. I get frustrated with them. And it's kind of like a child who is throwing a tantrum will frustrate a parent but you don't. It's with the feeling of love that's still there. It's hard to dismiss the love in favor of anger. So I get frustrated with people sometimes when I see them doing things that are self-destructive or doing things that are hurtful to others intentionally. I see that as very childish, but it's only appropriate because we're all children of God and we're all one family. And some of us who are acting out are dealing with their own fears and their own issues, and we need to overlook that and try to support one another as best we can. And I maybe it's a touch of hubris, but I liken myself merely being a slightly older sibling in situations like that, who's looking after my younger sibling who is acting out and trying to support them and nurture them, but it can still frustrate, yeah. Back in the orange top.
You said you see auras, but not in color of people. Are they different for different people? Do you have interpretations of that person's having good energy or a good day or good health, or any differences between them?
Okay, on the subject of auras, whether or not I see differences, meaning I don't see color, there have actually been a few times where I have seen color, but it's usually it's almost like my eyes aren't focusing on it and I see it out of the corner of my eye. And it's usually in very intensely emotional states that I can actually see it. It's very rare. But yeah, I do see differences in them. Those waves that are rising off the hood of a car on some days might seem like they're 4 inches tall, and other times they're held closer to the vest. I can kind of gauge the thickness of it and the density of it just by seeing
Do you
it.
have meaning or interpretations for those things?
It's usually how guarded the person is how dense it is, how compact the feeling that I get from it is just how restricted, how open they are to approach, basically. But no, I didn't like I say, unless it's extremely intense emotion, I don't usually see color and I don't usually get much of a reading, if you will. My eyes focused on you next.
Is there anything more you can add about the shattered lens that someone who's schizophrenic like your brother is looking through, and how does that happen, and is there a way to shift it? How does meditation affect that?
Okay, on the subject of the shattered lens of schizophrenia, and my interpretation of that, first of all, let me take a step back and say, so much of what it is I got doesn't even make sense to my own brain. It's really hard to explain. So I use metaphor to try to explain it. I can't explain what something is like, but I can explain what something is like. I can, with the lens, I see how people see the world differently. People have their own views of things, and we're all observing something outside of ourselves. And as we observe this, we put our own color, our own spin on it. It's like we're filtering it, we're only taking in what we're comfortable with. And reality as a whole, as well as even the concept of God with religion, everybody's viewing it, and they're all focusing on the differences. They're always focusing on the differences. But the differences are only in our own lens. God is God. And we see differences, and if we focus on the differences, how one person believes something different than what we believe, we're focusing just on our own lens. But if we look at the commonalities, we look at what's similar, we're actually seeing something beyond our lens. Schizophrenics are, again, there's some that are high functioning and some that are lower, but they're dealing with a different kind of flaw in that lens. It's not who they are. And I can't say that it's any less accurate than mine. I don't have the hubris of understanding what's real and what's not, but it's not something that they should be judged for or condemned for. It's not who they are. It's just it's what they're dealing with in this life.
Stephen was wonderful. I really appreciate your coming and sharing with us. It was a great afternoon, and we'll remember it, I'm sure, for a long time.
All right, so that's gonna wrap up the commentary for the night. It was a long one. I tried to let it just go as much as we could to get it all out there. I'm glad we got through it. So yeah, I just wanted to, I put the poll out there just to see. I may have gotten a little in over my head with this website stuff, so I was just curious before I kind of continue, just to kind of get an idea who may be interested and who won't. So that's why the poll's there. But yeah, anyways, there's also a Discord server if you'd like to join us after the show for a short chat or maybe a long one. I'm not sure how long I'll be there. Probably in there for about a half hour, 45 minutes. It's getting a little late here, almost midnight. But if you want to join us, Jimmy will pop up the link, and anyone who comes in new, we'll just try and voice verify people who want to join the voice chat, or if you just want to hang out in the text chat, that's cool too. Just have a little patience before we get to you. And wanted to also give a big thank you to Consed 2 for becoming a member. Thank you so much. We also had Mike Allen renewed his membership. Overwatch Cat, thank you so much. Ben sent a tip and said, amazing stuff. Words can't describe how important this stuff is. Alifaria, oh wow. We sent that the other day. Thank you. And DL sent a $5 super chat as well. Thank you so much. Says, I think I missed you the other night, DL. I apologize. Qualitio, I'm sorry, from the Discord server. Important stuff we're doing here. And Ben said, amazing stuff. Words can't describe how important this stuff is. Thanks so much. And I'm sorry for missing you all over the last few days. All right. And also wanted to say I do have 2 YouTube backup channels. So if something ever should happen here, please consider subscribing, hitting the bell for all notifications. The other thing is I took a poll early on in the stream about notifications not going out. The numbers didn't look too good. They really didn't. There's a fair amount of you out there who are not getting them still. Again, the best suggestion I can make is to hit the bell for all, not personalized. And I also have Twitter and Instagram where I put out usually an hour in advance, sometimes a little more. Prior to the stream, I'll put out a notification on both those platforms every single stream. And also in the community tab. The problem is with the community tab, because it's an hour out, the chance of you seeing it is slim unless you're already on YouTube in the moment. And if you're watching something long, like a stream like this, and you don't click another video, you're most likely not going to get the community posts through YouTube. The other thing that I found with YouTube for people that I follow and I really enjoy is if I want to see their community posts, I just hit like on a bunch of their community posts in the community tab. That way, YouTube knows, like the algorithm knows to remind me when someone posts something. But again, the problem is I only post them about an hour out. I try to, make announcements on a video, roughly giving a time when I may stream for the following weekend or something, but it's not always set in stone. The times can vary. I try to start between like on Fridays, if I do something, it's usually about 7 p.m. Eastern. Saturday, Sunday, I try to do it by 4 p.m., but it could be as late as 7 or 8 as well. Tonight we start at 9. So again, the time varies, but if you really want to stay up to date, and you're not receiving notifications, Twitter, Instagram is a good way. And also the Discord server. because I always send out notifications in the Discord server, and usually in there I'll say, hey, I'm trying to shoot for a stream at this time. Like, so in the afternoon, maybe about noon or 1, I might say, hey, I'm trying to start a stream for 4 or 7 tonight. You know, keep an eye out. I'll post a link as soon as it's ready. So other than that, that's really the best thing I can recommend for now. Someone said to maybe use the backup channels for notifications as well, because they're not receiving them here, which is just crappy, and I'm sorry. But yeah, and the one last thing you can also try is to check the home tab regularly. I mean, most of the time I'm streaming Saturday and Sunday. Sometimes, I mean, I've done a few Fridays recently, but that's not usually the norm. So usually it's Saturday and Sunday. So, you know, you could always check the home tab, and it should be right, you know, fairly close to the top, and also to try and hit set reminder. The other thing you can try to do is set your alarm on your mobile device or your home alarm. But I mean, really, those are the only things I can really suggest, because it's hit or miss with some of you guys, and clearly something's going on. So I'm sorry. So yeah, as I said, Twitter, Instagram. On Instagram, I have 3 videos I posted on there about the correlation between NDEs and DMT. And I also have an Odyssey account where my videos are sent over to. And I'm not on there as much recently, but I have done some exclusive streams on there, and there will be some future ones. I also have a D Live and a Twitch where every once in a while I'll play video games. So if you'd like to find me on those platforms, feel free. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you. Much love. I hope you all have a good week ahead of you, and stay safe. Don't get down. Remember, you are strong. You're a warrior. We're all warriors. And it's our last time. So hope to see some of you in the Discord shortly. Much love. Thank you. Have a good week.
Oh.